everybody, and welcome back to Coffee and Jesus, our Bible study here on our Twitch channel. My name is Zojalix or Alex, and thank you guys all for being here today. We are continuing on in our Life of Jesus series. Last week, Jesus was healing at the temple and was challenging people because they were like, "Yo, it's the Sabbath. You shouldn't be doing that." And Jesus was like, well, in short and in great paraphrase, Jesus was like, no, I'm Jesus, I'm going to do it. Because he was pulling the Jesus card, but because of just what he was called to do. He was called to be there, he was called to heal, and so he did that. So now we're going to continue on. We're going to be jumping a little bit, rather, where last time we were in in the book of John. Today we are going to be in Mark chapter 1. Sorry. Wow. Mark chapter 1. We're going to be starting in verse 16. So if you would like to read you here on the screen right next to me, or it is going to also, you can follow along in your own Bible. I read out of the English Standard Version. You are not required to read out of that version. You can read out of whatever version you would like, and you can follow along. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's dive in. Passing alongside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on a little farther, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother, who were in their boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and followed him. And they went to Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority, and not as the scribes. And immediately there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. And he cried out, "What do you have to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him and said, "Be silent, come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying out with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And at once his fame spread everywhere, throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. And immediately he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever, and immediately they told him about her. And he came, took her by the hand, and lifted her up, and the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by demons, and the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. All right, so we've got a lot to look at here. So first off, we have the calling of 4 of Jesus' disciples. We have Simon and Andrew. Simon, who would later become known as Peter, and then we have James and John. All are 2 different sets of brothers. Simon and Andrew are brothers, and James and John are brothers. Now, there's an important thing that we want to look at here in the historical context behind Simon and Andrew and James and John, and that is who they were. So, your wealth in the Roman Empire was very much based around things like education. If you were able to be educated, typically you were wealthy. And you were so wealthy that you were able to be educated and just spend your time in the church. Or in the temple, in this case. Now, if you are Simon or Andrew, or James and John, any of these boys, you are a fisherman. What does that mean as a fisherman? Well, that typically means you are poor. You are uneducated. Which means that we have Simon and Andrew and James and John, a group of 4 men who are uneducated, unwealthy, and thus, in this time period, not taken seriously. Which is terrible. It's not right. They're not, that's not okay. They are meant to be taken seriously. They're still very much human beings. They're still people. That does not change with their positions as fishermen. But because the Roman Empire is who they are, there are a ton of people who will just refuse to take them seriously because of those things. And that is not right. So that means then that what we have is we have people not taking them seriously. Nobody wants to take them seriously because of who they are. To which then Jesus calls them and says, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." So now, just like that, Jesus calls them. And immediately they left their nets and they followed him. They knew right off the bat there was something different about this Jesus guy. And so they picked up everything and they followed Jesus. And then going on a little farther, he sees James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were in their boat mending nets. More fishermen, more people not taken seriously, uneducated, not qualified. To which then Jesus calls them again. And they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and followed him. And this is the important part about this passage, everybody. So, you have Simon and Andrew and James and John, or Peter, Andrew, James, and John. These four, the people that the rest of the society would cast out, would forget about, not want anything to do with. And Jesus says, "Follow me." Jesus says, "You're the ones who I want to build my church. You're the ones who I want right by my side in my ministry." And they followed. They were called, they followed, and they listened. Which is amazing. Jesus is so cool. And so then they go from there. Jesus calls the most unlikely people, takes them to Capernaum, and Jesus begins teaching. So Simon, Andrew, James, and John, they obviously have some sort of an idea of who Jesus is. They follow him, and then Jesus is then taken into the temple, or takes them into a temple, begins teaching, and something about their teaching was different. People were listening, and he taught them as one who had authority, as not as the scribes. So not only does Jesus call these unqualified people, which is awesome, because now Jesus is able to then qualify them because he's Jesus, and that's what he does. But he also brings them to the temple, immediately begins teaching. The people realize it, and the teaching was making so much of an impact that a man with an unclean spirit, I just imagine, like, Jesus is teaching, and I imagine, like, this guy comes, like, busting through the crowd. He's being tormented and possessed by an unclean spirit, and immediately yells out, "What do you have to do with us, Jesus? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." Immediately comes in to break up what Jesus is doing, to break up and say, "No, you're not, I know who you are, I'm not letting you get away with this," all that good stuff. To which then Jesus says, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, knowing who Jesus is, understanding his authority, is then pulled out of the man. And the moment that happens, the people are amazed. And Satan tries so hard to stop what Jesus is doing, commanding the unclean spirits, and the people listen. And then Jesus goes and heals more people, all who were sick or oppressed by demons. So the thing that's really cool about this is Satan tries so hard to stop Jesus right here. Sends the man with the unclean spirit. to do his thing, to stop him. To which not only does Jesus command the authority and stop the unclean spirit, but that effect snowballs into people being marveled by who Jesus is. And we talked about it last week about the power of the gospel, and this is where it's even shown again. Sometimes Satan will do things that might seem like it is actually a hindrance of a ministry, but what it does is God is able to use it to open so many more doors. So, the coolest thing of what we're looking at here is it doesn't matter what's going on. If even your life is collapsing, God uses those moments where your life is at its lowest to do some really cool things. This man was possessed by a spirit. His life can't really get much lower. And Jesus then takes him, saves him from the unclean spirit, and he uses that to bring more and more people to him. So, this is the thing that the theme of this that I want to get across here. At the start of the passage, Jesus calls Simon, Andrew, James, and John, 4 fishermen, not to be taken seriously, uneducated, poor. And Jesus says, you're going to be who I'm going to use. And I'm sure these 4 guys were like, there's no way we're good enough for this. And then Jesus goes into Capernaum and uses a man with an unclean spirit to share who he was. Guys, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're super wealthy. It doesn't matter if you have an unclean spirit tormenting you. God can still use you. And that is what I want you guys to learn and to understand in this. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done. God uses you. There's no such thing as a bad gospel story, as a bad testimony. It's why I spend so much time emphasizing that you are loved and you are valued. It's why I have it on all of my graphics. It's why I always say that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, because you are. It doesn't matter who you are. God loves you. We love you. And when I say we, I mean me and my dog, because he's over here and I just want to emphasize that. But God loves you. I love you. And you are valuable. And God uses you no matter what. That's going to be where we end off today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this was an encouraging passage to just understand the power of God and who Jesus calls, and that you are valuable. As always, guys, you are loved, you are valued, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we will see you right back here next time. Have a wonderful day, everybody.